Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
So we're going to be looking at Parshat Terumah. We are in the Parsha that begins our first descriptions of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. So we get the commandment in this Parsha to make the tabernacle, and we get some instruction. And then, of course, we're going to see another part of that description where they fulfill every one of the instructions, and we get every single instruction again as it is fulfilled. And so it takes up a huge amount for Torah. We always talk about how terse Torah is, and Torah doesn't waste words, and it doesn't repeat itself unless it means to. And so it's an interesting thing. I want you all to think about it. I've brought a few commentaries forward for this morning, of course, but I want you to think about in a style that's known for tersiosity, probably not a word, but so for something that's known for being so condensed and so purposefully short on words, because remember, clay is heavy. It was written in clay. If it's so pithy, usually why so much time, space, energy to the description of the Mishkan and then the fulfillment of each and every instruction iterated again? So I just want you to think about that as we start to look at the text this morning. All right, so here we are at Parshat Terumah, which begins with something new and different. God speaks to Moshe, right, saying, now remember what's just happened. So he's gone up the mountain on Sinai to get Torah, right? So the people couldn't handle it. And so Moshe goes up to the mountain, goes into the cloud, and was there for 40 days and 40 nights. The next thing we see is God telling Moshe to tell the people that they should bring for God Terumah, that they should bring for God a gift, but only, so from whom? Me'et, from whom? From every person whose heart is voluntary. Only people whose hearts are voluntary, from them, tikhu et trumatai, you shall take my gifts. Okay? So there are other places where each Israelite will have to pay half a shekel, that it's the Jew tax, right? And so they had to pay it, and everybody had to pay the same amount. That is not this. This Terumah is a gift that is nediv lev, that is only of voluntary giving. V'zot ha-terumah asher tikhu meitam, and this is the Terumah, this is the gift that you'll take from them. Zahav v'chesef u'nechoshet, so you'll take from them gold, silver, and bronze, and tchelet, this color, tchelet, argaman, and tola'at shani, v'shesh izim. So you will take these expensive colors to make, and very fine spun yarn, and you will bring goat's hair, right? So the skin, right? The skin of the goat that is cleaned and tanned and then made into like a covering. Shemen lema'or, oil for lighting. Bisamim l'shemen, spices for oil. Hameshicha, that is the anointing oil, right? So you notice, all of you who know any Hebrew, Meshicha, Hamishcha, the anointing, Mishcha, anointing, Mashiach, right? This is the word for Mashiach. So just in case anyone tries to tell you differently, here it is. Mashiach means the anointed one. That's all. Liktoret hasamim, for the incense. You're going to take avnei shoham, so onyx. There's lots, you can imagine there's lots of ways to interpret a lot of these words. Some of these words we see in modern Hebrew for these stones, but many we don't know what they're actually referring to because it doesn't get used anywhere else. So when we were originally doing the ark with mostly onyx in the back, I did a whole deep dive for a high holiday sermon on shoham, on onyx, and spent hours researching shoham. So yeah, saying the things I do for you people. So hours and hours researching this stone, and there isn't agreement about what it is. Most sources might translate these as one thing or another, but you can see it in the Greek, it's something else. In the early Aramaic, it's something else. And we're not really sure what these stones are. We can imagine that they are semi-precious stones. They are certainly stones that can be microcalligraphed on. So they can't be something that's going to split when you write on them. So we have these shoham and other stones for the ephod, for the choshen. So the ephod that the priest wears, that the choshen is on, that the breastplate is on. And here's the commandment in general. Here it is, verse 8. We're very familiar with it, that we who have done the women's retreat. Ve'asuli mikdash. And they will make me a mikdash. So from this root, kuf daled shin. And wherever we see kuf daled shin, kadosh, kiddush, kodesh. Anytime we see kuf daled shin in that order, it means something about holiness, right? Something about being set aside and set apart for divine service only. So here we have V'asuli mikdash. They will make for me a holy thing. V'shachanti b'tocham. So this verb, shin, chaf, nun, this verb, shachen, is to dwell. So shchuna is a neighborhood, right? In modern Hebrew. So shechana, together, has something to do with dwelling. So v'shachanti, now it's being used as a verb, future tense, first person. So how do you say that? I will dwell. B'tocham. Now, what is God telling them to build? A mikdash. A mikdash is singular, right? Build for me a holy thing. That's this. It's singular. V'shachanti, and I shall dwell. B'tocham, in them, plural. So it can't be talking about this, because this is singular and this is plural. So how is it usually translated? And I will dwell betoch, in, betocham, like in them, in their midst. The mikdash is in the midst of the people. God wants a mikdash so that God may dwell among them, among the people. But of course, that is way too sexy an invitation to the rabbis. Way, way too sexy. So they are not going to translate it only bitocham, in the midst of them, but the rabbis are going to take this literally and translate it often as make for me a mikdash, a holy thing, that I may dwell in them. So each of them is to make of themselves a holy place that I may dwell in them. It's a beautiful interpretation by the rabbis. I love this move by the rabbis, because it takes it out of the realm of the synagogue, the temple, sacrifice. It takes it out of all of that and says, each one of you is a mikdash, and God dwells in us. It's a very famous, it's probably the interpretation of this verse, is that that's how the tradition understood it, that God dwells in each one of us, which is a beautiful theology, right, as well. All right. And exact, and as everything I show you for how to build the Mishkan and how to build its vessels, so shall you do. So, so shall you make it. And they are to make an aron, a ark of acacia wood. And then we get its measurements. So, right, again, very specific stuff here. A cubit and its width, ve'ama v'chatzi komato, and a cubit and a half its height. Don't forget, cubit is on an average male, here to here. V'tzipita oto zahav, and you are to cover it in gold, tahor, pure gold, on the outside, and on the outside you're to cover it, and on the inside. Mibayit umichutz, from the inside, its housing, and to michutz, from outside. And you are to make around it zer zahav saviv, all the way around, a rim of gold. So the ark is to be covered in gold, and the inside is to be covered in gold. We can talk about that. It's going to have 4 rings of gold, so that 2 rings are on its one flank, 2 rings are on the other, so that it can be carried, right? This is a portable ark. And you're to make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. And you're to put the poles into the rings on the flanks of the coffer to carry the coffer by means of them. So this is, I don't know why he's translating it coffer, but whatever. Because it's kind of a box, right? It looks like that's what a coffer is, right? As a box. And so, The poles are to be in the rings at all times, right? So in the rings of the coffer are the poles to remain. They are not to be removed from it. Lest you think you're staying here. You're not staying here. We're going to be moving, right? From place to place to place. We're on our way to the promised land. You are not to take the poles out because you don't get any kind of idea that this is going to be a permanent shrine in this desert. This is not where you are meant to be. And in the Aron, you will put the pact that I will give you. Edut, witnessing. So that's why it's translated testimony here. Aid is witness. So the testimony that I give you, meaning Torah, is to go in this ark. So you're to make a covering of gold. Interesting that it's called the purgation cover here because look at the, right, that's the word, Kippur, Yom Kippur, right? Chaf Pei Reish, we had a whole discussion about this at one point. Kaf Pei Reish, what does that actually mean? Lichaper, to atone. And what is purgation? What is all this business? We talked about this one year. I know you all were just glued to the Zoom the year I chose to go down the rabbit hole of Kaporet. And then again, it's measurements. And then you are to make Shnayim Kruvim. You're to make Kruvim. Kruvim. There isn't an English for it, really. They are to be gold, and they're to be hammered out, and they will be at the two ends of that purgation gold covering over the ark. Kruv echad, so one sphinx at the end there, and one sphinx at the end there. From one chunk are you to make the kruvim, both of them at its two ends. And they are to spread their wings upward, with their wings sheltering the purgation cover. Their faces, each one toward the other, toward the purgation cover, are the sphinx's faces to be. Their wings are above their heads. They are facing one another. It is from that place we learn that God will speak to Moshe from between the kruvim over the ark. Okay, and the rabbis think that this is very important. We've talked about this before, but I'll just mention it here. They think it's very important that the kruvim are facing each other, because for the rabbis, the only way that the divine voice is possible, the only way that God can speak to human beings, is when we face one another, is when we look each other in the face and we look each other in the eyes. That is what facilitates the divine voice coming into this world. And so the kruvim must be facing each other. They must be in relationship to each other, because that's how revelation happens. So then you put the cover on top, and in it goes the testimony. I will appoint meeting with you there, and I will speak with you from above the purgation cover, from between the sphinxes that are on the coffer of testimony, all that I command you concerning the people of Israel. And then we're going to get more instructions about the table of acacia wood, also covered with gold, also has a rim around it, also with 4 rings, also with poles that they can be carried with. And then we need serving utensils. They are also to be made of gold. And on the table that's made of gold will be the showbread, or lechem panim, the bread of panim, face. So lots of translations and interpretations of what this means, lechem panim. It's really probably something like the bread of greeting, right, of, welcoming God to the meal. The Mishkan is a place where we have intimate encounters with the divine. Well, the priests do, but on behalf of the people. And that is understood to be a meal, right? In the ancient world, they brought actual grain offerings and oil offerings and wine offerings into the temples, the small shrines, and the priests accepted them on behalf of the people, but the people were not allowed in, and they weren't allowed to see them. And they didn't even know what happened with them. They just know that it was for the God's consumption. So we have that here as well. The table with bread that would have been put before the god or the goddess in ancient Mesopotamian cult sites. So this is known all over Mesopotamia. It bothers some people that we have that form also in our cultic system, because we know God doesn't eat, and certainly they knew that. How could we have even a hint of paganism in our culture, but you know me, you know how we do this. You know we emerged out of Canaanites. You know that if you want them to go with this new God, Yahweh, you better give them the stuff they're used to in terms of worshiping. And why wouldn't you offer the God food, even if you don't think the God is going to eat it? That would be rude, right? To have a meal and not offer food to the God. So now we're getting the menorah. It's a very, very complicated description. It's not easy to unpack the Hebrew, so I'm not going to go there. We did that one year too. 6 stems, right, and one in the middle. So it's a 7-branched menorah, and it's to be lit, right, each day. So it's got almond-shaped goblets for the oil, and it's all supposed to be out of one piece of gold. Don't ask me how. And its tongs and its trays are to be of gold. And God apparently is going to show Moshe the pattern on the mountain, right? You'll do it as I'm going to show you on the mountain. So it seems that God understands that the instructions are complicated and don't make a lot of sense, because God says, don't worry about it. I'm going to show you the blueprint, and then you'll understand. Then you'll understand all this mumbo jumbo. You'll understand all these. All right. So then we're going to get the description of how the Mishkan is going to be made itself, the actual tent, that only the priests are allowed to be near. Only the high priest can go into the Holy of Holies. And we've looked at a diagram of this before, that it's done in thirds. So the outer courtyard with its altar where the sacrifices happened, and a fence around that, so the people don't even see that. They just bring the animal to the opening of that outer gate, and then the offering is offered on the altar. The other things happen in the 2/3, the front 2/3 of the Mishkan, and that is the place the priest can go to light the menorah, to put out the showbread, to light the incense, and then the Holy of Holies. The last third of the back third of the Mishkan is the most intimate place of meeting with the divine, and that is only for the high priest, and only on what holiday? Only on Yom Kippur. Yes, good, Bert. Gold star for Bert. Only on Yom Kippur. Okay? All right. So we get more and more details and descriptions of the boards and the planks that are supposed to go on that outside thing, and the planks and the boards that are covered beautifully, and the things that hold them together, that form the structure of the Mishkan itself. We get incredible detail here, right? You can just see all of this is still about the boards overlaid with gold. Their rings are made of gold. The bars that are holders are also made of gold. So you shall erect the Mishkan according to its plan, as you have been granted to see upon the mountain. Now we're getting the curtains, right? So an incredible amount of intense detail about its color, what it's made of. Now we get the sacrificial altar, and it goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And if you remember, we took a video tour one year. That was fun, wasn't it? We took a video tour of the Mishkan, and we flew into the Mishkan. That was fun. So this is the very detailed description of what Moshe is to have them do. He's going to be shown, like I said, the blueprints on Mount Sinai, so that he can understand all of these instructions and what it's actually supposed to be like and look like, and turn out like. So yes, George.
The point, my question was, it says in the very beginning a very short statement about God being within us, the Torah being within us. A very short, as I understood it, there was a very short statement about that. And yet there is this very long description of the outside Torah. And I don't, does that try and give more importance to the inside Torah should also be like this?
Thank you, George, for inviting clarity around this. The Mishkan is what will enable the divine presence to be among the people. So the Mishkan is the means by which God can be present among the people.
And within,
so if you recall, remember the conversations we've had about purgation and expiation and all of those groovy words, that all of that was to cleanse the space so that pure holiness could dwell there, because sin is attracted to sacred space. And so it had to be cleansed so that God's presence could be there. So the Mishkan is sort of a vehicle for God's presence to be among the Israelites. And that's how it's understood. It's a tool that God doesn't dwell in the Mishkan necessarily, but the Mishkan allows for God's presence to be among the people. Someone just put in the chat, because we need something to look at to feel connected to the divine, right? So often we need the physical manifestation of something that is a holy place so that we can sense the divine presence in ourselves. So is that clearer or no?
Yes, and still the word among the people is still it includes within the people.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because it just means in them, meaning it's usually translated in their midst, meaning among them. But if you translate it literally in them, which the rabbis want to do for fun, if you translate it literally in them, it means God is in the people. Okay. So let's,
if God is in the people, then isn't it a bit of a contradiction that you would have to cleanse and create the space? Or is it because humans perhaps typically are too distracted and can't imagine or can't access it on their own?
Yes. So that is where a lot of the rabbinic commentary goes, because if God is everywhere, why do we need a Mishkan? And so the rabbis say God gives us this out of love, because we mere mortals cannot conceive of the divine without some kind of physical pointer. That it is we who need the sacrifices. It is we who need the gold. It is we who need the ark, right? It is we who need those pointers in the physical realm. Yes, we're distracted. Yes, we have other things going on, and we want to look at our own gold, and we want to look at the gold on our finger, and we want to look at the gold in our ears, right? So if you're going to compete with that, you got to have gold, right? Because the other, Rachel, beautiful, brilliant. Because the other option is, right, what else do we do with our gold, right? Exactly. We've been known to do a couple of things out of gold, haven't we? So the golden calf, right, stands in direct opposition to the gold of the Mishkan, which is why Zornberg likes the Midrashim that say that the golden calf actually happened first, that Torah is not in order, and that the golden calf happened first, and the Mishkan is an atonement for the golden calf. So lots of the rabbis want to read it that way because that makes a lot of sense. Bert?
Yeah, I was going to say the gold in the middle of the desert. Was that the gold that was, quote, borrowed from the Egyptians?
Yes.
As they believe in?
That was the gold that the Egyptians felt moved to give the Israelites as they were fleeing.
And did the women have the gold? Because the gold was jewelry.
Well, presumably there's lots of...
I guess my question is, was it the women who donated the gold to make them?
I'm assuming both had gold, men and women. But yes, women are singled out for not having given gold to the calf, but having given their gold to the Mishkan.
And all of the skins and the acacia wood, that was somewhat of a miracle. I mean, they were in the middle of the desert.
Well, those might have been things they borrowed.
Or particularly isn't there a translation of dolphin skins?
Yeah,
I don't recall seeing
dolphins. Yeah, it's not a good translation. It's actually probably not dolphin, it's a color. The color is something like what is the color of turmeric?
Gold. Gold.
What's the color?
Yeah.
No,
It's golden.
So like
Orange.
a brown, like a brownish, yellowish.
Amber?
Yeah.
Yes, like that, Rachel. So some scholars want to believe that. So the scholars want to say that it's a hide that has been cleaned and tanned to reach that color. And also when you tan a hide, it makes it impervious to weather. And so it's not dolphin, it's probably actually the color. Yes, Rachel.
Okay. Thank you. I have a question. I don't know why I've never noticed this, but Mishkan versus Mikdash. What am I missing? Like what's the deal there?
You want to talk to me about that?
I don't know. I mean, it just seems like they're practically the same word. And I always thought, for some reason, it was build me a Mishkan so that I may dwell among them, not build me a Mikdash. So what's going on there?
So either it could be a case of the generic term for this category. So a Chanukiah is a menorah, but not
Okay,
all
right.
menorahs are a Chanukiah.
Okay.
So it's possible that this is the generic term for holy place, shrine, and this particular one is the Mishkan. The one God is describing is the Mishkan, which is a mikdash, which is a shrine, which is a holy place, a sanctuary, right? So Ki, if we were to describe Ki sanctuary, it would be very particular. It is nonetheless a sanctuary, and there are many in LA. But it seems that they are related clearly, but it's clear that it's about something that is set aside only for sacred service. Like that's what Kadosh is always about. It is set aside for sacred service. All right.
Okay.
We've worked on these texts a lot. We've been together a long time, a lot. You know that part of my frustration with the women's retreat always being at the same time of year was that we were always doing the Mishkan. And it's like, how many different interpretations of the Mishkan can you do? Right. And so this year I was like, here we go. We're going to be in the Mishkan. How many interpretations? And we're talking about each of us having lost our homes and our sacred spaces. And I just was not very excited about it this year. But as always happens when we study Torah with an open heart and open mind, stuff comes. So I'm going to share with you a commentary that I had never seen before, a midrash. Oh my gosh. I'm going to share a commentary that I have never studied before and work through it with you because I thought it was really beautiful, especially this year as we're all struggling with physical space and what it means. So this is Midrash Agada from, of course, Shemot, from our Parsha, which is just a really beautiful midrash. Uvenoheg shebe'olam, and the way of the world is, im yeyela adam ben, if a person has a child, kol zman she'aben katan, all the time that the child is little, aviv noten da'ato alav, the parent gives its attention to the child, to care for the child, to wash the child, to wash it, to feed it, to slake its thirst, and to carry it on the parent's shoulders, ad sheyigdal, until it grows up. V'kevan sheyigdal, and when it grows up, tzarich lahashrot et aviv babayit na'eh. It is incumbent upon the child to make sure that the parent has a lovely home. Af atem hayitem b'mitzrayim ktanim. Well, so it was with y'all. Y'all were little in Egypt. You were minors. I washed you in water. I fed you. I slaked your thirst. I carried you. Now that y'all are standing like at this place of, maturity, banuli bayit, build for me a home, which is why Torah says, ve'asuli mikdash, and they shall build for me a mikdash. This incredibly beautiful midrash that is saying it's not that God needs a home. It's that God cared for us when we were little. And what a child gets to do for their parent out of love when the parent is elderly, what a child gets to do is build a nice place for their child to live. For their parent to live. That is the way children love parents at a certain stage of life. That if you are fortunate, you will live to see your parent need your help out of love, right? And God forbid, God needs, right? This is written by the rabbis. God forbid the rabbis are suggesting that God needs our help. What they're saying, which I think is a really beautiful interpretation, is that God is providing us who have been cared for by God. God is providing us a way to show with love our wanting to care for our heavenly parent. And so it's really for us to have a vehicle for our love as we mature as a people in order to give back to the divine that took care of us in Egypt and took care of us, of course, in the desert and saved us by water and gave us water and food and manna in the desert. It's just, for me, just really resonated for me this year. And also as the communal home, that what God wants is for the people Israel to build a communal, loving space for the divine, which is all many of us have left, right? For a lot of us, we don't have our private tents anymore. Our private tents burned down. what we are focusing on, what Torah tells us is important, right, is that we need a communal space that we recognize as the place where we acknowledge the divine among us. And for me, that is the fact that KI stands, and there are 60 workers at a time up there remediating the damage. And we are forging ahead with the plans for the remodel, because the pews have to be recovered anyway now. The carpet has to be replaced anyway now. The floors have to be replaced anyway now. So a lot of stuff that we were going to do voluntarily now have to be replaced. Thank God we had a vision before this happened about what that was going to look like. And while they're having all that scaffolding up to fix stuff that needs remediation, they can also do some of the stuff that they were going to have to bring scaffolding in for on our dime. Go ahead and do some of the things that we had already mapped out to be done. So it turns out that the remediation that the insurance company pays for is going to help keep the costs down on our glorious new sanctuary remodel. So yeah, exactly. It's very real this year. It just feels very real. So as much as this is all metaphor and all of that, it feels very, very, both metaphorically really important that God dwells in us. We don't need physical things. We don't need our physical spaces to feel connected to our personal relationships with the divine. And it also feels very, very, very specifically physical this year. The synagogue building, the sanctuary, the fact that we had already planned, to do stuff with it, and now we have to. And that, God said to Moshe, I'll show you on the mountain. I'm going to give you instructions and I'm going to show you. And it's like, it turns out, guess what? We had a bunch of plans. We had a bunch of blueprints. We had, right, a map of what we wanted to do before we had to scramble. I mean, imagine, just, I know it's going to be painful. So just, you don't have to stay there long, but just imagine if this had happened and we had to put together a committee to decide what material was going to go on the new pews. Just imagine for 30 seconds, right? Lisa, that's exactly the expression I was looking for, right? If this had happened and we had to decide what to put on the pews and on the floor, yeah, that would have been a process that might have driven me into an early retirement. But because we had already formed a committee and because they'd already done so much work and they'd already been so wonderful to hash it out together, we didn't have to do it. It's already done. All the choices are already made, and they were on their way to being made.
Is there some sort of suggestion here then that by giving such detailed instructions, God is saying, I'll take care of that part. You make the community.
I really like that, Lisa. I really like that God said, don't worry about a design committee. Don't worry about those conversations. Don't even go there. I know how y'all roll. It's going to be nasty, and I would like you all to come together. So I'm going to make the choices for the colors, and I'm going to choose the pattern, and I'm going to choose what it's made out of, and I'm going to choose all of that so that y'all don't fight, and y'all can use this as a way to come together rather than as a way for everybody to, dig in and throw their weight around and all that stuff. Beautiful. I love that interpretation. Make sure you bring that forward when we're talking about the remodel. Jody?
This is off topic, but it's a topic you brought up before. When do you think we'll be back at KI?
We don't know.
Year, 2 years?
It'll be before 2 years.
Okay. That's all I want to know.
It could be 6 months to a year.
Okay.
The challenge for us is not when is the building ready, it's when is the community ready. Okay. So some people are pushing to get in there as soon as possible. And the minute we can be in there, we should be in there. Other people are saying, I am not driving my children through Armageddon to bring them to KI. I do not want to see it. I don't want them to see it. I can't deal with it. I don't want them to try to deal with it, right? 2
years is good. 2 years. That's when we're rebuilding.
So we often project onto our kids what our reaction is, but they're like, yeah, I don't want to traumatize my kids driving them through there, meaning they're traumatized by driving through there. So we don't know yet when. We're hoping that minimally we can have our offices functioning there. So people who want to come to us can. But if it turns out people really don't want to come there, then we may stay in our rented offices longer. So It'll be up to, essentially what I'm saying is it'll be up to y'all. Like once it's remediated and once we can be in there, It's also about when are preschool parents going to want their kids exposed,
yes, of course.
to the air, to the what? I mean, so it's a long ways away from having any answers, but 6 months to a year is what we think for remediation.
Amazing.
And then we also have to
Thank you.
the work of the new ark. Sure. Rachel.
So before Jody's question, there was I was thinking, based on what you were saying about community, the question, the response about like focusing on the community, also by taking people who still have this slave mentality and just giving them, like, you just focus on the work. Yeah. Artists, you do your art thing. Weavers, you do your weaving thing. I don't know, forgers, you forge, whatever, right? Like, just do the thing that you're good at and focus on that work, because how would slaves even conceive of doing the other? I mean, they've been slaves.
Right.
They've never had to do that.
So most interpretations involve some sort of understanding that this is a communal building project, so that they can take pride in something that they built for exactly that reason. They've been building for Pharaoh, and they've been building for the gods of Egypt, right? They've been building, whatever they've been building. It's not been for their understanding of their relationship to the universe. It's for the Pharaonic Empire. And right. So, that's why it's also, to your point, that's why they have to be nadiv lev. These offerings have to be voluntary of heart, because they had to do the other work. They had to, they had to participate in Egypt the way they were told to build these things. God wants these slaves out of their own will to give gifts to make the Mishkan, and to give of their talent and their gifts to make the Mishkan. So when it's done, it's been voluntary, their gifts, and they can feel a sense of ownership and pride, right, in what they have built, because as slaves, they didn't have that. Yeah. And also to bring them together, right, to work together on behalf of this new understanding of what their relationship to divinity is. It's not Pharaoh anymore. Right. Their relationship to divinity used to be Pharaoh was God. All right, Alex?
A little off topic, but how do you think that could connect with the Black experience in this country? What was, for the enslaved people of this country, do you think the church was really the sort of their mishkan in trying to not only create community, but also, I guess, I don't know, make meaning?
Yes, 100%, right? That they gave often their best stuff to the church. And that's happened throughout history, right? Think of all the oppressed populations that gave to the Catholic Church, right? They gave their last money to the church, right? Because they felt pride in contributing to something so beautiful and so grand. But I think what you're saying with the experience of Dafka Black people and enslaved people in this country is that they were so disempowered that when they had the opportunity to build their own churches, right, they did so with a passion and a fervor, right, that is a little different because of the incredible disempowerment of being slaves. So I think that's absolutely a parallel experience. I think it's actually one of the reasons we've allied with that community from the beginning of the civil rights movement, is because some part of us continues to understand this experience because we read it and relive it all the time.
I guess, I mean, I don't know enough, but the exodus of our people, I mean, one could argue that for thousands of years, the ongoing persecution, right? I don't know what, after the Exodus, what it really looked like, because I haven't studied enough Torah for the Jews, like how disempowered were they not allowed to read? They had no voting rights, those kinds of things. And I know there are all sorts of restrictions, but it is an interesting comparison to see sort of how a people, persist when they're so disempowered.
Yep. And that's how we understand ourselves, right? So that's the bind we find ourselves in, that we both ally with those who are oppressed, because we're still oppressed, in certain ways, hated, discriminated against, and the very real reality that we are also people of privilege, and we are people with white privilege. So it's kind of this catch that we find ourselves in as the Jewish. All right. Yes, Margot.
Real quick. So I personally love Terumah. It is a favorite of mine. And when I think about, the effort it takes to make a space nice, and I know that like even Rabbi Daniel talks about, he uses the word sacred space all the time, in sermon. And I just feel like we intend to make beautiful at home in ourselves. So it's kind of like that meta, like I'm in a space, and then in a space even deeper. So I wanted to shout out really special vibes about Terumah. I think, it's brought awareness, at least for me, finding Jewish community, building Jewish community. I think a lot of us here are rebuilding, many types of homes. And, I feel that Terumah brings a lot of attention to that as a part of the human experience, and maybe a piece of strength we can all pull from as we move forward in the many homes we dwell upon.
Beautiful. I think it's one of the reasons our instinct was to make Judaica available for people who lost their homes, right? Because the instinct is, to Judaize beautifully the home, right? It's not, okay, just grab some candlesticks and you can light Shabbos candles. It doesn't matter, right? It's like we all had that impulse that, wait, all my Judaica burned, like all the beautiful things that were related to making this a Jewish home and a Jewish spiritual spaces are gone. And for me, my art did that as well. Jody, I keep waking up with adrenaline pumping, thinking about the piece that you gave me, having burned. It was like one of the favorite things in my house. And so anyway. All right. So
I just want to add something, just along those lines, a congregation like ours that has privilege, in a way, we're not asking people to contribute to the rebuild in a way that maybe Black churches do. And I'm sort of wondering maybe what we might do to create a culture of contribution, because we have money, we can pay people to rebuild for us. What can we do? I don't have an answer, but I'm just sort of throwing it out.
Well, what I think I like about the idea going forward of that is, what can we ask everybody to bring to the new sanctuary? So maybe we ask everyone to, in whatever way they want to, craft a blessing for what do they wish for this new space? What do they wish for the community that's going to be in this new space? And we find a place to keep those.
Yeah. I think I'd love to talk to you about this. Well, maybe we can come up with some ideas.
Well, it's a good thing we have a chairperson of Jewish Life and Practice. So.
Who's that?
If she could chew on that with the rabbi, maybe. All right. I want to look at another. Oh, wait. Sorry. I saw a hand just before I did. Yes, Judith.
I just wanted to say that watching you with that dog, after all you have been through, tells me so much, looking into your eyes, as you mentioned in the early part of your talk today, what's important in our lives. And the love you show to that little animal after all you've been through shows the humanity in your heart. And it's beautiful to watch. It wasn't funny. It was so touching, though.
Thank you. Even though I'm ready to wring her little neck. Thank you. That means a lot. Adriana?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the person's comment about rebuilding Judaica in the Palisades. So my daughter goes to Pressman Academy, and there's been a lot of posts from the cantor at Temple Beth On. She's helping. Like, are you aware of this? She says Jill Lefferman curated a beautiful registry for us at Gifted LA. So to support local Pressman business to help families affected by the fires, and she's offering a 25% discount. You can shop at this link, and this is for us, for the Palisades houses that lost their Judaica. How can I post this? Should I post this on the chat?
Sure.
Okay.
And Michelle Stone is working on collecting the Lions of Judah luncheon. They were collecting Judaica, so I know there will be ways to disperse that to us.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for that, Adriana. All right. Let's look at, just want to look at, I won't keep you long, but I do want to go here with that question I opened with, right? I love that, of course, it's not just we who notice this. In Genesis, the Torah dedicates 31 verses to the creation of the entire world. The Mishkan, on the other hand, receives 450 verses. What's even more astonishing, considering the fact that it was always supposed to be a temporary dwelling, only until we built the temple in the Promised Land. Why then, right, is it so prominent? Our great Torah teacher and scholar, Professor Nechama Leibovitz, gives us a clue. The main point isn't how the world was created, she wrote, but what humankind chooses to do with it. What we see here is the first known iteration of what social scientists have called the IKEA effect, a cognitive bias that makes something makes us value something more if we feel like we put it together. Social science studies shows us that people who sell their used IKEA furniture online tend to price them higher than comparable items. They feel that by putting them together, they create more value. This isn't hard to understand. We have a need to feel competent and useful. So, to that whole discussion about disempowered slaves. The lesson then couldn't be more simple. Want a better, holier, more perfect world? Just do it. So I love this, that the creation of the world gets 31 verses. The Mishkan gets 450, because it isn't about the world. It's about what we build, right? It's about what we create as human beings in this world. And Yitz Greenberg has this teaching about Torah in general, which spoke to me about what we do together. The eternity and the immediacy of the Torah is, and he's writing this about Parshat Terumah. The eternity and the immediacy, meaning the long term and the immediacy of Torah, is best upheld when the Torah is illuminated by the best in ethics and knowledge of the current culture, and the culture is reviewed and explicated by the best in Torah. The Torah's dialectic of revolutionary utopian goals and gradualist, traditionalist, family-centered process will make its greatest contribution when it is applied to all aspects of current civilization. This will assure that Torah is not party line liberal or conservative. Torah should blend and critique and enrich all classes and all categories of understanding. Such a Torah becomes not a foreign body in the body politic, but a religious and moral home for God, even as it infuses divine justice and love into the culture and the living generation. If we engage the current culture deeply, but also correctly, then we can repeat spiritually the goal of this week's Parsha: they shall build me a sanctuary, a home, and I will dwell in their midst. So a beautiful statement to me of Reconstructionism, that, right, we are supposed to critique our culture through the lens of Torah, and we're to read Torah through the best understandings of what our culture teaches us are our ethical and moral values now, not 3,000 years ago. So that it is this constant back and forth, how Torah informs our lives and how our lives here in America 2025 informs, how we interpret Torah. That is what walking in two civilizations means. And it means Torah is always relevant, as is the culture that we live in relevant for how we're to understand how to apply Torah to our lives. I feel like that is what we do every single week. It's just stated a lot more elegantly. And from Rabbi Green, they shall make me a holy place and I will dwell within them. As all that I show you the structure of the dwelling and all its vessels, thus shall you do. These seemingly simple verses call forth complex readings. Based on long tradition extending from Philo through the Hasidic masters, we read betocham as within them, within each one of them rather than in their midst. The verse then refers to the dwelling place that we make for Shekhinah within the human heart. The sanctuary of Israel in the wilderness is a paradigm for the inner Mishkan each of us spends our lives constructing. In the following verse, show is followed by a direct object, otcha, rather than the expected indirect lecha. So I will show lecha, I will show to you how to do it, but that's not what Torah says. Torah says, I will show otcha. What does that mean? Why is that important? Well, of course, if you're going to do a Hasidic commentary, you better look at the Hebrew. And every single non-regular something is an invitation to interpretation. So it doesn't say, I will show lecha, to you. Rather, it says, I will show otcha, literally, et you. I will show you. Ani mar'eh otcha. It means that I am showing that you are what I'm showing you. Not a vision of the Mishkan. The vision of the Mishkan is I'm showing you otcha. I'm showing you you. A vision coming from within your own self. The commandment to build a Mishkan serves as an internal mirror, allowing you to look into an inner place that was already there, but of which you were unaware. You build your tabernacle out of materials that are already there within you. In the next verse, the you switches from singular to plural. Only Moses, the mind of Israel, has been shown the model. But all, the entire self, are to engage in the construction. Building that holy place is thus set forth as the ongoing work of Israel. In fact, building the Mishkan is the task that defines melacha, constructive labor. That is what we are to do with our lives. But should you say that this work within the heart is all we have to do, And never mind the outside world and how we live in it, the verse comes back and says, V'chein ta'asu, and thus shall you do. The end product is not just a heart that contains the divine presence, but an entire life that is built around that truth. The final test of our Mishkan is the way that we live and we act in the world. A beautiful teaching brought to us by Rabbi Arthur Green. He usually bases his teachings on the Sfat Emet, Rabbi Yehuda Leib of Ger, the Gera Rebbe. So the Gera Rebbe is saying, don't think I'm showing you blueprints for something that's just out there. Ani mar'eh otcha. I'm showing you blueprints for you. This is the blueprint of yourself, your life as a Mishkan. So our job is to unroll the prints, right? And that's what we do at 11:30, right? We sit and we unroll the prints and we read the plan for how it is this week, today, this moment, this breath, this situation, how we construct the Mishkan out of our life. And that is always the call. That is always the instruction. May we figure out how to do that. And that is the challenge every day. It's the challenge today. Go forth and meet it. And I will see some of y'all hopefully tonight.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.